So, talk about our third segment. Talk about gold. Talk about Fort Knox. So, between us, we probably should be able to have a half decent take or two on this.
At least half.
You're a successful venture capitalist, investor. I worked in asset management, asset servicing, commodities.
I bought
trading,
gold for a long time. Every time I got
20 years, we should.
For many years, every time I got paid, I'd go to this little gold dealers and buy a 1 ounce
Actual
gold.
physical gold.
Yeah.
Right.
So I racked up some gold ounces.
Nice.
I'm a fan of gold.
Good. Nice.
Yeah.
Anyone out there that's got any money to burn, I know we're few and far between, but do get a little bit of physical gold, right?
Yeah.
If nothing else, if the world economy completely collapses and we have to go back to barter.
Yeah. If you've got money to burn, keep it in paper money. But if you've got money you want to preserve, gold's good for that.
Right, yes.
If you're doing it for the... I have got some silver as well because it's a much smaller denomination.
Right.
An ounce of silver is like, I don't know, like £40, something like that. Whereas an ounce of gold is like a couple of grand. So for the apocalypse, you actually want silver.
And some tin snips so you can clip your own coins.
Yep, all that, yep.
I do think that if there was a true global economic collapse and everything went back to barter and you've got some gold coins...
Yeah, you can go and buy...
You can't barter much with that because it's worth so much. You want to swap a chicken and some bread with someone...
Well,
your one gold coin is way too much. Even one silver coin would be way too much. You're going to want to clip your own coins.
Yeah. But I could say, for
barter.
example, buy 5 chickens with a silver coin. I'd be happy with that deal.
Okay.
Or maybe a big cow for 1 gold coin. But it had to be a big one. Yeah.
Or like a massive
I think we've gone
drum
off topic.
of pure water. Yeah, we're immediately getting off topic.
Gold,
Okay.
Fort Knox.
So, yes.
Is it all fake?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? So...
They're definitely faking something.
You think so? They're definitely hiding something.
Well, because senators and congressmen keep saying, can we have a look around? And they're like, no, because it's a military base. It's like, well, yeah, but we get shown around military bases all the time.
Yeah.
So why can't we see this one?
It's not even a military base. It's the security of it is by... They've got like the special mint police. There's like a little...
Fort Knox is a big military base.
Okay.
It's got lots of personnel on it, but it also has the gold thing in it.
Right, yeah, okay. That is protected by its own little police force, isn't it? But yeah, no, the story goes... So, where to begin? Gosh. Last time it was audited was in the early 50s under Eisenhower.
Well, they claim that they audit it every year, but they don't release the results. It's secret.
They don't even do that, I don't believe.
Well, they claim to.
I think on paper they're supposed to, but in reality they don't.
The last time they did a public audit was like 1954 or something like that.
Yeah. So under Eisenhower, they did one, and apparently everything was tickety-boo at that point.
But America hadn't gone off the rails in 1950.
Yeah, right.
That was like the 60s onwards.
Well, so America's history with gold. So in the Great Depression under FDR, FDR put through an executive order, actually, saying normal people aren't allowed to really own hardly any gold. You're certainly not allowed to hold any gold bullion.
There's an exemption for like wedding rings and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're allowed some gold, but you weren't allowed to hold bullion, put it that way.
Yes.
Gold bars, you just weren't allowed to. Talk about land of the free.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it was to do with the Depression and to do with...
It's massively unconstitutional.
Yeah, yeah. It does feel like that's infringing your liberties, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, that was actually repealed by Jerry Ford, I believe, in the 70s after Nixon. So, but anyway, for a long period there, the federal government was hoarding gold, and in fact, I think the higher watermark was like 1941, i.e. during World War II. America had said to loads of countries in the world, or in Europe really, basically had said, look, Herr Hitler and Signor Mussolini might conquer your country, and why don't we hold your gold reserves for you in case that happens? And then after that, Stalin might rock up, so we'll keep your gold safe for you.
So that's basically my starting piece for Brokenomics. It's that at the end of the Second World War, the Americans had all the gold, which is partly as a function of they're the only people who had a functional economy while everyone else was getting bombed, and partly as a function of they were safekeeping for everybody else. And basically, they just didn't want to give it back, and that's why we have a dollar-based system today.
I think the high water mark was in 1941, where they had something like 2/3 of all the gold in the world was with them. I mean, even to this day, like I can't remember the exact date, but in like 2007 or 2011, something like that, Germany said, we want loads of our bullion back that you've had for years, for decades. And it took Fort Knox, or the Treasury, it took them like 7 years to give it back.
So this is the problem with gold, about going back to a gold system. Well, I don't think it could be done today. Is because the whole
gold standard.
The gold, the gold standard. Because the whole logic of gold is that you kind of need to centralise it. Because if you don't, you can just you have to believe when somebody else tells you they've got a certain amount of gold, you need to believe them. So the Russians and the Chinese say we've got this amount of gold and therefore our currency is backed by gold. You have to believe them.
Trust.
Or
Trust
they need to let you come in and start drilling into their gold bars to make sure they're not tungsten inside.
Right, I was going to talk about that. Yeah.
So that's why gold was always concentrated basically in two places, in the US and in the city of London. And of course, we just don't have that level of trust anymore. So you basically just can't go back to a gold standard.
So there's loads of things to say. I haven't got a massive amount of time left. But so FDR took them off the gold standard. They went back on again. And then Nixon took them off again in like 1971. And they haven't gone back on the gold standard since then. There are other places than Fort Knox. There's sort of the Federal Bank building in New York. And there's one or two other locations, but Fort Knox is sort of the main one. 60% of all America's supposed bullion reserves are supposed to be at Fort Knox. Apparently. So after the 50s, when there was supposed to have been an audit there, people were talking about it because the 70s were an time of economic upheaval with the oil crisis and all sorts of things. So in 1974, there was by 1974, there was a big calling to let people see that the bullion is still there.
In 1971, they'd come off the gold standard, basically because the American government, as it is inclined to do, was spending too much money. And so they had to come off the gold standard. So by 1974, things were going badly because they later shored up the dollar by backing it to oil, basically, by doing a deal with the House of Saud in Saudi Arabia. But in that interim period, it was highly suspect whether they actually had the gold. And so I think they let a bunch of senators in then. Yeah.
But it was just a PR stunt, an exercise in PR, as far as I can tell. Anyway, just say I wrote an article a while ago about Yellen's time bomb, Janet the Felon Yellen. Basically, during the Biden years, they didn't do anything. I had a very good conversation all about the history of money, and in fact, quite a lot of talking about gold with Godders.
When was that?
Godfrey Bloom.
Missed that one.
When? A fair while ago now, 6 months ago or something. Okay. Yeah, last summer.
I'll have to dig that one out.
Last summer. We made some content about the history of bubbles. Do you remember that?
Oh, yes.
That was ages ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were gonna cover like 12 of them, and we did 2 or something.
Yeah, that's back in Feb 23.
Yeah.
We made another bit of content talking about the Wall Street crash and other crashes and depressions, didn't we?
Yeah. That was
you've got your own show all about economics.
I've done a gold one.
So Elon Musk tweeted this not very long ago, looking for the gold in Fort Knox, and it's gone. But he said they're going to have a look at it. Can we play that by Trump? Can you play this?
Well, happening today, President Donald Trump said he wants to visit Fort Knox to make sure the gold is still there. The depository at Fort Knox has stored precious metals for the United States since 1937. During a meeting with the French president sitting right next to him, the president mentioned the possible audit again.
We're actually going to Fort Knox to see if the gold is there, because maybe somebody stole the gold. Tons of gold.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says there is an audit every year and that all the gold...
Does it?
No.
That's the interesting thing about gold. If you were to take all of the gold that's ever been mined, it would only fill 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
I've heard that, yeah. I've heard it's only 1 Olympic-sized swimming pool, but...
I might have to check that.
But either way, it's less than you think.
Yeah.
It's much less than you think.
Yes.
Because you walk past...
Oh, it genuinely is rare.
You walk past... Yeah. You walk past some random jewellers in some nothing town, and the shop front is filled with gold chains and stuff, and you think, oh, there must be thousands, millions of tons of gold in the world. No, not at all.
Yeah, it's really not that much.
No, certainly not millions of tons. Play this clip, actually, for us as well.
We're also going to Fort Knox. I'm going to go with Elon. And would anybody like to join us? Because we want to see if the gold is still there. We want to see. Wouldn't that be terrible? We open up this Fort Knox. It's just solid granite that's 5 feet thick. The front door, you need 6 musclemen to open it up. I don't even think they have windows. Wouldn't that be terrible if we opened it up and there was no gold there? So we're going to open those doors. We're going to take a look. And if there's 27 tons of gold, we'll be very happy. I don't know how the hell we're going to measure it, but that's okay. We want to see lots of nice, beautiful, shiny gold in Fort Knox.
Okay.
Don't be totally surprised. We opened it.
It's just remarkable that it's actually a real political issue.
Yeah.
That it's not just it's not conspiracy theory. It's a real question that needs answering.
Oh, this is a great time
really
to be in political commentary because
or to have a bit
basically America's had this massive regime shift and they don't believe anything that went before them. And they're right to question it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I just think it's remarkable that it's even a question, really. Just to quickly say about the 1974 thing.
Oh, yes.
When they went in there, they showed... Yeah, there was a few senators and a few journalists, like a dozen or two hand-picked members of the federal government and a few hand-picked journalists. And they showed them into one vault. And they showed them loads of apparently gold bars, whether they could have been tungsten or something. Some people said that maybe it's tungsten sprayed gold, because tungsten's about as heavy as gold. But they didn't do any purity tests. They didn't check them against serial numbers. They didn't show them many volts worth. They just showed them one.
That's why I always.
And they said, "Okay, we're done, right? Questions over. No more questions, right, guys?" But it wasn't an audit. It was not an audit.
No.
Okay.
And actually, assaying gold is quite hard work. That's why I always stick to the coins, not the bars. Because if you buy a bar and then you try and sell it, they need to re-assay it every time to make sure it's not got tungsten inside.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it could be. Yeah. The other thing is they've said that in the late 70s through to 1981, they did audits, but they weren't released to the public. You didn't get any old person allowed, like a truly independent body, to go to Fort Knox and check. So is that worth much?
You want a great story about the British gold? So, and this is going back to like the early 1900s, but basically there was this this guy who sort of rocked up outside the gold place, and he said, "You guys need to be in the gold vault tomorrow at 3 p.m."
Okay.
And then he kind of wandered off.
At the Bank of England, you mean?
Yeah, and they were like, okay then. But for whatever reason, they were in the middle of the gold vault the next day at 3 p.m. And it basically there's like a grate at the bottom of where they were holding the gold, and it pops open. He pops up, and it turns out he was a sewage worker, and he realised that you could just get into the gold vault from the sewers.
Is that a true story? Is that not apocryphal? Is that?
No, that's a true story.
Okay, I've not heard that one before.
But he was just an honest fellow,
right, yeah.
So he was just making them aware of it so that they could secure it. But if he wanted to, he could have run off with like millions of pounds worth of gold, but he just didn't.
It's great. It's like hacking into the NSA or NASA or something, and then telling the government you've done it. You say, look, I could have done some nefarious stuff. I haven't, but this is how easy it was to do.
I don't think if a sewage worker today found himself in the gold vault, he would do that.
It'd be hard to find someone to sell bullion, like a big bar of bullion to, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like to get rid of it after the fact. That would be difficult, wouldn't it?
Yeah. You don't sell that behind the back of the pub, do you?
Another thing is, in 2017, in Trump's first administration, there was a very, very, very limited audit, apparently. But again, it wasn't the full-blown, let's look in all the vaults, count how much is there, if there's anything there, and check the purity of it, check the serial numbers. It still wasn't that. So that hasn't been done, some say since the Eisenhower era, and some say since the Truman era, since 1947. Either way, the Treasury, because it comes under the Treasury, not the Federal Reserve, it comes under the Treasury. Either way, it seems like they've got something to hide. Now, whether it's that it's not there anymore, or there's only a tiny fraction of it, or even possibly there's more gold. It's possible that there's more gold than they thought was there, which is also an issue in a completely different sense. Of course, it wouldn't mean the collapse of the American economy or the collapse of the dollar, but that's also bad if they've got way more gold. So that was the theory that I was going to throw up, which is this one.
which is
that from Iraq.
What if the problem isn't that the gold's not there? What if there's too much gold? Because basically the story is that ever since World War II, America has been going around invading places. And if you ever read accounts of the troops who actually did it, it's very obvious that the first thing they do when they get into a country is not rush to the central bank and secure the paper money. It's they rush to the gold and they secure the gold. And if they've got oil, they secure that. That's like every time you read accounts of what troops did, it's they hit the ground, beeline for the oil, the actual oil and the actual gold, and secure them, and then everything else follows after that. Right. So America's been going around, and this is like a famous photo from Iraq where they, one of the gold deposits they sort of secured. And the official story is that whenever the US does this, is they then give that money back to that country. So in the case of Iraq, the story is that it was used for redevelopment efforts. Right. So it was spent on Iraq's behalf in order to fund development. But what if that's a load of baloney?
Yeah, what if that's just simply not true?
What if, ever since World War II, America has just been invading places, stealing their gold, and then sticking it in Fort Knox? So the other possibility is that actually they got far too much, and that's the other reason why they don't want to it audited.
Well, it seems like some of the massive gold holders in the world, like JP Morgan and HSBC, they're shipping over tons of gold from London to New York and then maybe onto Kentucky, but who knows? Yeah. Seems like something's going on at the moment. Every central bank... That may just be arbitrage. That may just be... So JP Morgan and HSBC can make money because it's worth more if you sell it in New York.
So every central bank, apart from the British, are desperately buying gold and have been for the last few... Basically, since 2008, they've all been buying gold as fast as they can, apart from the British, because, of course, we sold all our gold.
And also, I think it is politically good for a country to underplay how much gold they've got. Apparently, the Chinese do that. The amount of gold the Chinese say they've got and the amount of gold everyone thinks they've got. Yeah. We think they've got way more than they say they've got.
That's
They're deliberately saying they've got less than they have.
So they might have 20,000, was it 20 tons or 20,000 tons, whatever it is, but they might have, because they're supposed to have like 3,000 tons, and they might have 20, because they're basically, if you look at Hong Kong, which is a major gold exchange, massive flows have been going through that for years, and it's all going into China. In fact, another thing, a gold fund manager told me, and this was 20 years ago, is that China is actually one of the world's largest producers of gold. Yeah. And you think of it being South Africa and Canada and Australia, but no, actually China is one of the biggest producers of gold. Every single ounce that is mined, the government buys at full market rate and puts in a vault somewhere. So if you work all of that backwards, it's possible they've got 20,000 tons, which means they've got far more than the US, right? Now, why is that important? Because what happens if one day there's another 2008 financial crisis where the dollar is really teetering on the edge and people are like, yeah, I don't like this dollar business. And then China suddenly announces, yeah, we've got 20,000 tons of gold, and from now on the yuan is going to be backed 15% by gold. That could be enough to tip the dollar over the edge and for China to basically take over as world hegemon at that point.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. In other words, it's politically a sticky wicket for the United States if they've got significantly less or more than what they say they've got.
Either they're much weaker than they were, or they're much more corrupt than they said they were.
It's still way worse if they've got none or hardly any. That is still way worse. But it's not great to have tons more than they thought.
Yeah, because they've basically been stealing from everybody for years.
Whether they've got 8,500 tons in Fort Knox or what.
If they've got exactly what they're supposed to have, that's probably the best outcome.
Whether it's worth 250 billion or more like 425 billion, it needs to be audited basically in order for the trust. Any sort of trust.
So there's no good reason for them to not do it if they've got what they claim they've got.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that's why it's odd that it hasn't been done for 50 years plus. The other question just to ask is, does it matter? Because I retweeted Elon about when he said, and it's gone, about the Fort Knox. And some people said, it's a reasonable thing to say. I'm not saying, I think they're wrong, but it's not unreasonable to say it doesn't even matter because haven't been on the gold standard since 1971, and the dollar or American power is backed up by aircraft carriers and the US Air Force, so it doesn't matter. But I think it certainly still does matter, though.
I'm of the view that it massively matters.
Yeah.
When it all goes to shit, gold is what will count.
And it's just, okay, they're not on the gold standard. Okay, every paper dollar isn't backed up by gold, fine. But that doesn't mean that the US economy, the house of cards is the US economy, wouldn't still collapse, that all confidence and trust in that system wouldn't collapse if Fort Knox was found to be empty.
Imagine if there was some huge cyber attack or a big Carrington event or something like that, and the modern computer system went out for a couple of years. The whole dollar system would collapse, because the dollar is basically just a ledger of this bank owes that bank and that bank owes that bank, and it's basically just a big ledger of who owes who. So if the lights go out for a couple of years, the dollar just gets reset. The gold is proper. It's sanity. It's at the end of the day, gold still counts.
Yeah, no, sure, absolutely.
So 100% it still matters.
And being an investor, whereas that's how I worked in asset management and commodities trading, just the power of confidence that this house of cards is...
There's something real at the base level.
All value, the value of everything and anything is to do with confidence.
Yeah.
And so if
it turns out you've been blagging it for 60 years...
Yeah, confidence would fall out of many different types of market, not just the Forex and commodities trading, but all sorts of things. Well, it'd be a knock-on effect.
Yes.
Into the whole world's economy.
Oh, it hugely matters, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so...
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.